Canadian Football Perspective is proudly presented by our good friends over at Fox 40, introducing the new generation of electronic whistles, brought to you by Fox 40. The new rechargeable Fox 40 electronic whistle produces 120 decibels of software-defined sound power with the push of a single button. You can pre-order yours today at fox40shop.com. That's fox40shop.com. And don't forget, they've given you a great offer here through Canadian Football Perspective. You can take 15% off your entire order with the code CFP15. Again, fox40shop.com. Use the promo code CFP15.
Zone. 30, 35, 40, 45, Grant going into BC territory. The kicker stumbled. Janarian Grant takes the opening kickoff for a touchdown.
3rd and goal. Evans leans to his left on his back foot into the end zone. Touchdown, Tiger Cats.
Popped up and it's intercepted by the Bombers. How many times has happened? Thompson laterals it and they're on the run.
4 receivers to his right. That's where he'll look. Pressure on it. Bust. Open. Keon Hatcher, countdown on, 30, 20, 10, touchdown Lions.
Malaros forced to scramble, and he's going to gun it for an open shot at the 40, 35, 30, 25. Can he get around corner 20? Dalton Schoen is going to score! Oh my goodness!
I hope, there's somebody out there that might still want me, and I don't think it's the end of the Cody Fajardo football book. I think it might just be the end of a chapter. It's tough to say, you never know, but it's difficult to go out like this and to not, your last home game not be able to start, and you have no idea what's going to happen in the off season. But I love everybody in this building, and this organization gave me an opportunity to play, and the first really organization who gave me a lot of confidence and pride and took pride in me. And so it's bittersweet, and it's going to be a tough, difficult off season that I got to think and take time with my wife. I got a baby now, so got to take a lot of things into account, but I don't think my playing days are over, and I hope I can stay in the CFL for more years.
Welcome, everybody, to the breakdown. Marshall Ferguson, Derek Taylor, who is coming to us live from Vegas. Yes,
right?
He's in Las Vegas. I didn't even know that. I texted DT. I was like, hey, this Fajardo stuff, we kind of have to do a podcast, right? And he's like, yeah, I'm in Vegas. Give me a half hour. I'll run to find somewhere to sit down and relax and be able to talk this through. So just in case anybody in Winnipeg was wondering how dedicated your play-by-play man is on 680 CJOB, there are no days off in the world of Derek Taylor.
There's a chance they meet the Riders in the playoffs still. It's tiny, and it got tinier when they went to Mason Fine for the upcoming week, but there's still a chance. So we're still contemplating it, still working out how it would be and how the Bombers would do against a Mason Fine-led Riders team. Oh, boy.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I want to begin just by asking you because, off the top here, for anybody who is just kind of like checking in through it, you go back to the very beginning of this podcast, if you can, a couple of different times and listen to the audio that I have inserted of Cody Fajardo's press conference when he had his first media availability of the week, and listen to it a couple of times. Because I know if you're here on the podcast, you kind of heard it in passing and as the music was playing and we welcome you in and all the rest. But I'm telling you, like, really go back and listen to that and like see whether or not that's the Cody that you know, or if that's the grumpy Cody, if that's the I don't really enjoy the way I've been treated here Cody, if that's no more Mr. Nice Guy Cody. Because I read a whole bunch of things into the interactions that he had, which I said to DT before we began, there's literally nobody else in the country I would rather be talking to right now other than you about this topic, because you obviously spent time in Saskatchewan. You were obviously there during the Fajardo days when he came in and replaced Zach and all the rest. And so the question that I have been wondering about that I want to ask you, and I understand that you're not insider and reporting on the details of behind the scenes, but you do understand the dynamic of that team, I think, as well as anybody in this entire country. Cody's relationship with the Riders, whether that be Craig Reynolds or if that be Craig Dickinson or Jeremy O'Day, whatever, how would you define Cody's relationship to the Saskatchewan Roughriders organization?
Oh, I would. I'm trying to think of the right word because you're kind of sensitive to everybody involved in it. I feel like at this moment it's wanting, right? They're wanting more from Fajardo on the field. You probably couldn't ask more from a guy off the field with the stuff that he does. They want more from him on the field. And Fajardo, it feels like just with the things that have been said and the things that have transpired in the last few weeks, it feels like he's wanting support from this club that he lifted up. And I mean, in my mind, he continues to lift up, even though the fact they're a 6-win football team. If this wasn't Fajardo, I don't even know what they would be. So I think wanting might be the best description that I have. I mean, especially when Fajardo says what he said yesterday, it feels like this is destined for a breakup, right?
Yeah, I mean, when he says, "I hope there's somebody out there who wants me," and again, this is not shocking because, as we know, there's turnover in CFL free agency, and there's been a lot of people posturing that, forget about the Bo Levi Mitchell stuff for a minute. Like, if you are looking around at just, do you feel like you have enough at quarterback? It feels like Saskatchewan, whether it be their fans, media, otherwise, have kind of been saying for the last month, month and a half, 2 months, like, I don't, maybe, kind of. It's interesting for me to hear you say, like, he's still lifting them up, because I feel as though Jason Maas, and this might be unfair to Cody, this might be more of an overall offense thing, whether it's receivers or injuries or terrible protection that he's gotten throughout the year. Like, there's a lot of moving parts here, but I almost feel as though Maas wants to run a certain style of game. And the way that I remember you and I discussing Maas pairing up with Fajardo when you were back doing Saskatchewan radio is I was saying, if you can take the quarterback run aspect that he has naturally in his game, great athlete, knows when to take off and run.
Awesome.
When he's healthy, he's incredible. If you bring in Jason Maas and you want to absolutely precision and pick apart those intermediate ranges and become a more efficient passer and maybe hit some of those deep shots and all the rest, then of course you go through 2021 where the deep shots are terrible. Then you go into this year where he's completing a higher percentage of those passes down the field. But I still think the process is terrible. Like, the ones that do get completed, it's like he's leaning backwards, running away from 3 guys, throws it off his back foot into double coverage. And, oh, look, Duke Williams made a play. And at the end of the day, the statistics will show Duke Williams, 1 catch, 35 yards, and it will say completion to Cody Fajardo. But I'm watching that, and I'm like, that's not good football comparative to what you're seeing with Kolaros to Dalton Schoen, or Vernon Adams Jr. at times now to Dominique Rhymes down the field, or certainly Rourke when he was there, or Jake Mayer when he decides to stretch it to Bain, or some of the guys that they've had in there. Who I'm trying
Henry,
to
yeah.
Henry's the one that I was trying to reach for there. But it's when I hear you say that he's still lifting them up, I think the natural rebuttal for a lot of fans across the CFL is going to be, what do you mean by that? Because there's been so much of this public narrative and discourse that what Cody's dragging them down, and I don't know whether it's Maas is being dragged down by what he has available to him, or if it's Fajardo dragging down what Maas is trying to do offensively. I can't tell chicken or the egg on that.
Yeah, and that's kind of the conversation that in the first year, I just assumed it was going to go great, right? I assumed Jason Maas and Cody Fajardo would just be like peanut butter and honey, and boom, it's going to be fantastic. It hasn't been. You and I have been talking for a year and a bit, right? About is Fajardo Maas not something that's going to work because it hasn't yielded the results. Just in the grand scheme of things, if I was building who's a better offensive coordinator, McAdoo or Jason Maas, I would probably pick Jason Maas.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily have the knowledge to really fully make that decision, but I feel like it's Jason Maas. So when you add, in my mind, a better coordinator to a quarterback, you should get better results. But you added a better coordinator, in my mind, to a quarterback, and you've gotten way lesser results. And then the problem becomes, the problem every organization has is are the coach and the quarterback not on the same page? Okay, we're going to have to pick one. Are there other problems that are contributing to the coach and quarterback not being together, right? Like, I don't know, 60 quarterback sacks, right? An unrelenting amount of immediate pressure and teams sealing off the edge so Fajardo can't spin out and the quarterback's dead in a second and a half, right? There's a lot that goes into this, but I think we can. I don't know. Could you reasonably conclude that Fajardo and Maas are not a match? Because I feel like without a ton of forethought and evidence to back it up. I feel like they're just not a match.
Okay, so the answer is yes, they are not a match. We have learned that. That is confirmed in my mind moving forward. I don't think Fajardo is going to be a part of Saskatchewan's organization, and I think a big part of it is that him and Jason Maas do not work together. Now, there's a lot of reasons why a quarterback and a coach don't necessarily work together. I think a big part of this is that you know as well as I do, better than I do, DT, that I used to joke when I was doing Hamilton radio that at the exact same time, the CFL had two new Disney princes walk into the spotlight. One of them was Nick Arbuckle, because he was this incredibly outgoing and kind and gentle and thoughtful man who would have a conversation, this big bright smile, and he was this wonder kid who popped up in Calgary. And the other was Cody Fajardo, who won Simone Lawrence hit to Zach Collaros, and all of a sudden, hey, here comes this guy, and that first game was terrible, and then all of a sudden moving forward, it was like, oh, okay, like 2019 moving forward, it's like you accidentally just found your franchise quarterback. Didn't mean to, but it happened. And obviously all of this is revisionist history now because we're 3 years extended from all of that. But I see the way that Jason Maas teaches, coaches, interacts with Cody Fajardo. Like we saw it on the sideline in Calgary at the end of last year where, and I remember watching this in real time and being like, oh God, that's a bad relationship. Because I was around for Kent Austin, Zach Collaros at the end of his time in Hamilton.
Oh,
and there was a in the 60-1 game against Calgary. There's always these moments, right, that stick in your mind when we follow the game the way that we do. There was a moment in the 60-1 game where Zach threw a pick six to Trey Roberson, and he went straight to the sideline and he went right to Kent Austin, and Kent just kind of put his hand up and went, "What do you?" And then Zach said like maybe 2 words, and Kent literally put his hand up and was like, "That's enough." And just basically was like, go sit the hell down over there somewhere. Just, I have no use for you right now. And I know for a fact that there was major tension. You could see it on the sidelines between Zach and Kent by the end of their time together. Last year in Calgary, end of the year, Cody, I think it was like a late game situation. They were trailing on the road against the Stamps at McMahon. And he goes, he's getting ready to call a play. And I think there's a timeout or there's an injury. Cody goes to the sideline and you see the conversation happening. And again, there's so much to be learned from these sideline conversations because in the heat of battle, that's what people really are. And I know this because like I would stand in those huddles with Stefan Patacic and John Behe when I was at McMaster, and they would say, hey, do you want this play? And I'm not going to lie to them at that point. If I love a play, I'm going to say, yeah. If I don't, I'm going to be like, oh God, no, I can't do that. That's terrible. I saw a play in which Fajardo, and this is the night where he started complaining about not having the deep targets and the Duke Williams of the world. He had this conversation with Maas. He's kind of shaking his head going back to the huddle. He takes the snap, he chucks it deep, and immediately takes off his helmet and starts yelling and screaming and running up and down the sidelines like I'm being forced into doing stuff that I don't like or I'm not good at or I'm not comfortable. That you can just see he's pissed. Then you see this year on the road in BC where I believe it's an interception thrown by Fajardo. He comes to the sideline. TSN gets a shot of Maas, and I clipped it and I tweeted it out because I read Jason Maas's lips because I know enough of football terminology where as Cody's coming off the sideline, Maas is going, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then Fajardo walks over and he says, was it quarters? Meaning cover 4, right? Like spread it across the back end. He goes, was it quarters? And he asks again, he goes, was it quarters? And like Cody's off camera, but you see Maas go, well, he's wide the fuck open. And so like you can read that off of him.
Really?
And that's where I see these interactions where whether it's like Maas, hitting Cody in the helmet of like, hey, get your shit together. Or like, hey, why are you not seeing this the way that I am? Or why aren't you playing the style of game that I want you to play? Or it's like, there's a part of me that thinks between the number of sacks he's taken this year, the fact that you can't instantly rebuild an offensive line, the fact that he gets treated by Maas like that on the sidelines, and that his personality doesn't really seem to be one who likes to be thrown into the fire of coaching, where like real hard, tough love coaching doesn't really seem to me like something that Fajardo would embrace or want. That's why when I see him yesterday being like, I don't know, maybe somebody out there wants me, I'm like, there's a part of him that wants out. Like he enjoys being a franchise quarterback, but if I'm looking around at him right now, he might be looking at big picture and going, I got a young child. I'm married. I want to play football again, but I could probably do without the media pressure and the fan scrutiny and the social media BS and getting hit all the time and having an offensive coordinator who doesn't seem to really like coaching me all that much.
Yeah, that's they're different. They're very clearly different guys, right? And the very best coaches are able to know what a guy is about. Like that's got to be by far the hardest part of being a coach, right? Is 45 different guys on the roster all have different personalities and all have different ways. Like this guy needs to be made mad. This guy needs to be patted on the back. You know, this guy really needs to be patted on the back. This guy is bonkers and just don't go near him during game time because there's so many different personalities. On my stupid high school team 100 years ago, totally different personalities from the guy who we knew was juicing to me, the nerd who just, you know, not bad, but just got to keep out of the way of the guys who are going to college, right? So that's got to be by far the hardest point. And that's being used, and this is what I absolutely hate. It's being used as a negative point against Fajardo, like he's soft. And I just think that is total. You've cursed once, so I'm going to say that's total bullshit.
Yep.
That is total bullshit because tell me Fajardo was soft week 8 of 2019 when he dives into the end zone against Hamilton for the game-winning touchdown, then goes and plays the rain-shortened game the next week, absolutely unable to throw a deep ball because he ruined his shoulder scoring that touchdown. Tell me he was soft. Was it against Winnipeg when they get a penalty and start on their own 8 and drive for the game-winning field goal? Tell me he's soft in all these. Come on, that's crap. It just is. Guys can be in absolutely the wrong headspace, but to think that Fajardo, who has played injured, he went into the 2019 West Final. He had to be snuck into the hospital to get a shot into his ribs from a doctor in a Riders t-shirt who was going to the game later today and take on Willie Jefferson and the Winnipeg defense, who was going to kill him, unable to throw the ball because he torn whatever it was, rib cartilage or whatever that, or two oblique muscles, excuse me, and before that game. And if not for one crossbar, the Riders go to the 2019 Grey Cup. So this thing about Cody Fajardo being soft is total crap, and I don't even have time for it. It just because a headstrong head coach and I don't even know how to describe a more emotive player don't get along. We can't just say, well, headstrong is right, run through a wall, take a salt tablet, rub some dirt on it. Bullshit that football was 30 years ago, but can't be now because we're now different in the way we act. So on that side of it, you can't just lay this on Fajardo being soft because come on, I hate that one. It's out there, it's in fans, it's in the media, it's total crap. It's total crap because the guy's track record, though not the length of a Zach Collaros or Michael Riley or the elite quarterbacks that you want to be compared to, if in this game, just because you're not Michael Riley, bones made of adamantium, and and will that appears to be made the same, like Wolverine. Come on, that's crap for me. Crap.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying there, and I want to get to kind of the organizational side of this in a second. But there's something I've kind of always wondered about Fajardo, is it looks like his time in Saskatchewan's coming to a close here. Okay, is there? And I'm not here to psychoanalyze it because I'm not qualified, but I've always wondered whether or not his demeanor, his, again, big bright smile and kind words and like the things that he believes in, the way he carries himself. And I mean, even yesterday he's being told like, hey, you're not going to play. And like, does this team need a spark? And he's like giggling through it. He's like, well, a spark's a heck of a thing. And, it's the spark. You can only get it when it comes from a quarterback. And so he's like smiling the whole time through, where it's like, if that were Jeremiah Masoli in my time dealing with him in the media, and he had just been benched for the final couple of games of the year and they still had a chance to make the playoffs, and you said, does this team need a spark? Jeremiah, God love him. I love Jeremiah. I think he's a super interesting character, good football player. He would unequivocally say, I don't know, ask coach.
Yeah.
But Cody has this thing where it's like he's always on. And that plays well in a market like Saskatchewan when things are good. When things are not good and you're always on, you become kind of like Russell Wilson in Denver right now, where things are not good, but you just keep stepping up there and being like, every day, one step at a time, me and the boys, we're going to figure this out, got to believe. And then you're just like saying stuff for the sake of saying stuff and you're keeping it positive. But there was a great essay on I think it was Monday Night Football Countdown this week, where Seth Wickersham from ESPN did this whole big thing on the concept of like Broncos Nation, let's ride. And the whole output of this piece, the thesis, I should say, was that when things are not good, when you are not riding the way that you want to and you keep acting as though things are just fine, people see that. Like, it comes off as being not necessarily fraudulent, but up against that line, I would say. And because Cody is always on in the media and he's always got this personality and the smile and carries himself and bounces around, I wonder whether or not it's just made him a really, really easy scapegoat in this situation, which, again, I'm coming at it from the perspective of I don't think his play has been good enough. I think structurally he has things that are not great in his game. I think that there are quarterbacks out there that do things significantly better than he does in a variety of different aspects of playing the quarterback position. So I'm not saying everybody's just pitchforks and flamethrowers and all the rest trying to go after Cody, but I am saying he makes it kind of easy to go after him because there's never any fear of him clapping back in the media and being like, that's a bullshit question. And no, that has nothing to do with me. That's about the team.
Yeah, and maybe, I mean, if you think it's fraudulent now, you probably should believe it was fraudulent all along, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, guys are who they are. Like, all of a sudden we want a guy to be brooding and angry and not positive when they're 6-10. Like, I get it. You want some sort of, like, the thought that, hey, we're going to figure this out. That's what everybody would say. Mm-hmm. Like, we're going to get together. Like, I mean, I don't have a ton of examples right now because when I was with the Riders, they were 13-5 and 9-5, and now the Bombers are 14-3. So I'm used to a lot of quotes from guys who are winning, right? But you hear, hey, we got to figure this out. The Edmonton Elks will be like, hey, we got to figure this out. We got to get this together because that's how it's going to go. And I get some people just never liked Cody because he is. Because of the sprinkles of Jesus, and he's religious, and maybe that turns some people off. And he is very happy, but I mean, that's who he is.
Yep.
Deal with it. Like he ain't changing because he's made a couple $1 million being that guy.
But that's interesting to me, though. DT is like that's who he is. But the problem is, there's a lot of times where he's doing the media stuff, and I can't tell who he is. Because I like he seems as though he's putting on this front of just like, this is what a franchise quarterback is supposed to be. Therefore, I'll say the things that franchise quarterbacks say. Therefore, I am a franchise quarterback. And
so kind of an imposter syndrome thing in your mind.
It's like,
okay.
I don't really know who he is. Like, I feel as though I know. Dane Evans is a good example from my time around Hamilton. It's like, there was no bullshit around Dane. Dane was like, when I suck, I suck. Here's what I need to fix. Like, here's what I think we should do better. Here's the play that I messed up on. And I guess I want that realism in my quarterback. And I never really got that from Cody in Saskatchewan. And I wonder whether or not it's because as much as he was the backup and the short yardage sneak guy and he was figuring out the CFL and all that, I wonder whether or not he got thrown into the fire and went from, because in Saskatchewan, it's obviously more than just playing quarterback. It's franchise guy. It's on posters. It's the obligations to go do community events, which, as you say, he's been fantastic at. But there's so much more than just from snap to whistle that goes into playing starting quarterback in Saskatchewan, in this country, in this league. And I wonder whether or not all of those other things surrounding him, he might have been ready for being a starter. He jumped in 2019, like we say, played well.
Oh, but that game in Ottawa was awesome.
Incredible, yeah. But at the same time, it's like Dominique Davis was great in that game. And look what's happened since. So
yeah, but however, that was the best game Dominic Davis will ever play in his life. Fajardo had better games than that week 2 game in Ottawa, right? Like, Fajardo went up from there. Davis 30 of 39 for 370 and 3 touchdowns and laser beams. That's the best game he'll ever play. Fajardo went up from that week 2 game. Like, he was the West nominee for MOP that year. And yes, a lot of quarterbacks got hurt, but he was, what would he put up, 5,000, 1,000 in a full season?
Yeah.
Based on those numbers? Like, who puts up 5,000, 1,000 rushing? Nobody.
Yeah. And my reason in bringing that game and Dom Davis up specifically is because, like, a one-game example of a player, doesn't tell the full story. As you say, Cody's season told a much different story. He was ready to step into that role. But then you go into off-season, and then pandemic, and then cancel season, and then come into the following.
Right, but the following season, he leads the team to a win over Calgary at home in the playoffs.
Right.
So we have evidence as recent as and the West Final, they should have lost that game by 30 because 6 turnovers and you lose by a score. You probably should have lost by way more.
I forgot about that.
They beat Calgary in the West semifinal. The Calgary team that had this voodoo over the Saskatchewan Roughriders and the brother who had voodoo over the other brother and la la la. Like Fajardo is the quarterback of the team that wins the West semifinal against the Stamps. Like we have evidence within a year ago that Fajardo was pretty good.
Yes. Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. I'm trying to figure out the big picture assessment here of like how are we supposed to remember his time and the aspects that might have affected the fact that he's getting pushed out the door, it seems like at this point.
Protect the guy and he can play football. Like
Yeah.
Cody had a podcast with Isaac Harker, and he would always joke that Isaac had a better arm than he did. And I always found it kind of funny because when you watch Harker throw, like Harker put everything in his life and his parents' lives into every throw to get the wide side out. And you're like, damn, okay, that really, he really putting all your muscle strength into it. Fajardo thinks he has a worse arm than this. And it was ultimately probably pretty close. But I mean, maybe you can't do the Taylor Cornelius 20-yard deep out to Mike Jones on the sideline, but 4x1 and it's Kyron Moore alone to the one side and he's one-on-one, the safety's over to the other side. You just got to have a Ricky Ray arm to get that ball in there, right? For a 45-yard gain and hit that and have your receiver not stop dead because he lost the ball in the lights. Hashtag Tevin Jones, hashtag Bombers win this season, right? But I mean, in all the skills that Fajardo has, sure, he's not this quarterback in this level, and he's not this quarterback in this level, but there's no quarterback going that's a more effective runner than Fajardo.
Yep.
Like, and yes, I'm counting in Vernon Adams. I'm counting in Jeremiah Masoli. Designed run, scramble run. There's nobody whose skills, in my mind, are bigger than Fajardo's. He's fantastic in those two results when he's healthy. So you can take that and you can add in the other stuff. And if McAdoo can do it, why hasn't Maas been able to do it? And is it the offensive line? Is it injuries and suspensions to receivers? What's the deal with this Saskatchewan offense?
Yeah, and the team at large, which is where I wanted to go in terms of like organizationally to kind of round out this podcast, because when I heard Cody's comments saying, I was told that it's not performance-based, but that the team wants a spark, is essentially the quote that was used from Dickinson. I'm like, that's the same thing, because you get a spark when you bring in somebody who plays better performance-wise than you do. So, it's just a lot of words being thrown around that don't mean anything. And this is what I have found consistently throughout this season with Craig Dickinson in Saskatchewan, is just kind of saying stuff for the sake of saying stuff that doesn't really mean anything, because we can see through the BS. Like, we can see what was happening with Marino. We could see what was happening with Duke Williams after touchdown Atlantic in the pregame. We could see what was happening with Duke Williams on the sideline. We could, like, on and on and on the list goes. It's obviously been a crazy year in Saskatchewan. For whatever reason, it's typically a crazy year in Saskatchewan. But we've been able, if you actually follow the league closely and kind of know what you're watching for the most part, you can see through a lot of the muck of whatever gets said in media sessions. And when Dickinson comes out and gives his comments, and then Cody gives his comments, it reminded me a lot of, again, this is a bit of a self-indulgent story, but it ties in because it was a Dickinson brother. When I went to training camp with the Stampeders in 2013, I went back to school in 2014. I knew I was never going to play in the league, but in 2014, Calgary played a regular season game against the Hamilton Tiger Cats at Ron Joyce Stadium. I ran into Dave Dickinson as he was leaving the field after winning over, I believe, the Dan Lefevre-led Hamilton Tiger Cats.
I love the fever. I love him. Dan, wherever you are, I love you.
And Dave Dickinson's walking, and I saw him, and I just want to go up and shake his hand, because at this point, I don't even know I'm going to be working in media, covering the CFL, any of the rest. So I was like, hey, Dave, coach. I walk over, and he looks at me, and he goes, hey, Marsh. Yeah, we were keeping an eye on you last year, and then, things happen. And that's okay. And I was like, what do you mean things happen? I was like, I thought I had a decent year. But that feels like that's probably the way that this got broken to Cody, is like, yeah, Cody, like we don't have a problem with, the things that are happening right now. And but we're definitely going with Mason this week. Okay, coming out of the bye. And it's like, so it's not good enough. And this is where I find interesting. This is where my mind goes. If Saskatchewan fans obviously know that their offense has not been producing to the level that you would hope for. If you're making the move to Mason Fine now, you're not doing it just to spite Cody, just to kick him out the door and screw yourself over and forget about the crossover. And you're doing it because you have to make this move thinking that Mason might be able to legitimately give you something that Cody is not. If you think that this week, have you not thought that 2 weeks previous? Have you not thought that in Hamilton? Did you not think about making a switch at halftime? Like the weeks before that, when things started to trail off? To me, the idea that you can come out of a bye week, make this switch, throw Cody under the bus, and say, we think Mason gives us a better chance to move forward. Okay, if you did, then it's just cowardice to not make the move earlier. And that's where my mind goes, is that if you're going to be a head coach and an offensive coordinator, and you're going to have your team's best interest at heart, make the move when you feel as though the team is struggling. Because what's happening right now to the Riders, and the reason that Cody is not playing this week going forward, it's not new. It's been happening for the majority of the season, and especially for the second half of the season, as they've actually played against more difficult competition. So I don't know why this was not addressed earlier, because they were kind of like hands off, hoping nobody would notice that they were struggling. It felt like for a while, like, hey, we'll figure it out, and lots of season left, and we'll see what happens. And then they come out of the bye week and they're like, oh, Cody's been bad, so we're going to bench him now. It's like, did you just realize that there were struggles? Because I don't think you did. So why are you making the move now?
There's a couple of possibilities. One is they've given up on the season, which I doubt that's it. I think that they honestly believe that they're like, we're going to compete for as long as we have a chance. There's still a chance to make the playoffs. If it's 0.4%, we're going to take that 0.4%. So some might say, I think they've given up. I don't believe that Jeremy O'Day and Craig Dickinson would give up. Is it setting the table for next year's quarterback? Because Rider fans have seen Mason Fine. He played in Week 16 last week against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. The Ticats had to win that game. The Riders didn't care. Their playoff spot was set. And Hamilton just ate their lunch. And even Marino's enforcer on Jeremiah Masoli that he got fined for didn't turn the tide in that game, for all the Marino stands that may exist.
Let me throw one at you on this, because this, to me, even though under different circumstances and different power structure and organizations and all the rest, last year when I saw the Edmonton Elks make the move for Nick Arbuckle when Brock Sunderland was there with Jamie Elizondo, I saw that move and I was like, oh God, that is desperate. And it wasn't because I don't believe in Nick Arbuckle having the capacity to be a starting quarterback in the CFL. It was because I'm like, they're just grasping at straws in order to say, like, if we go and get a different guy, maybe we can use them through the offseason and sell belief that we should keep our jobs, and then we can go into next year with fresh hope. Well, what did that buy Brock Sunderland and Jamie Elizondo? It didn't buy them anything. They were
upgraded ticket out of town, hopefully.
Yeah. So this, to me, was, whether it be O'Day or Dickinson otherwise, was them agreeing to make a move that probably isn't in the best interest of the franchise in the short term, but in an attempt to say, look, at least we're doing something. And again, that's where the term cowardice comes to my mind, is because, like, if you believe that you're giving the organization a chance to do something, but you're doing it now after the Hamilton, like, that Hamilton game was essentially like a winning you're in for basically both teams. I think I saw ET_stats that does the great stuff on Twitter. I think I saw him tweeting out like win probability and what it would mean to the playoff seeding and all the rest. And he basically, I think at that night, was like, whoever wins this game has the best chance to be able to be in that third spot in the East Division, like, going forward, regardless of what. Now, we never knew Hamilton was going to win for the first time since 2004 in Calgary and whatever. But every single effort should have been thrown at the Hamilton Tiger Cats by Saskatchewan in that game. And it kind of felt like the night just drifted along. Dane Evans made a couple of bad interceptions, and he got away with it because Saskatchewan didn't do anything to go and win the game. And that's why I'm like, I feel as though this move is being made just to show, hey, Rider Nation, look, we're trying. And it's like, yeah, but that doesn't buy you anything.
One of my buddies who works out there, I don't want to throw them out in case we were just talking about this, but they said, hey, I'm curious to see who makes the move first to save their own job. Will it be the GM who fires the coach? Will it be the coach who moves the quarterback out? Will it be the president who fires the GM? Who's going to make the move first? Because if you check out the Great Rider Fans message board, there, yeah, exactly.
It's the office.
The three-way standoff. Who's going to make the move first to save their job? Because there is I love the Rider fans message board. There's nobody who is free from the thought that you should be fired in a certain segment. There's people like, no, Craig Reynolds has to go. Jeremy O'Day has to go. Dickinson has to go. Fajardo has to go. So who makes the first move? And, was this person's theory? And I thought, oh, that's really good. I'm going to watch for that. And is this the first move to your theory of, hey, we've got hope for 2023. We weren't in the playoffs the year we hosted the Grey Cup, which, Marsh, they're not going to make the playoffs in the year they host the Grey Cup.
I was just thinking the exact same thing.
Come on, that is organizational failure. That is so bad. You knew you had the runway for it too. It's so bad. Oh, and I don't say this just because I call games for the Bombers. I don't say this reveling at all. I say it more mystified that this is the offensive line you put out there in a year that you're trying to go to the Grey Cup. You didn't have Duke Williams. I'm trying to say, I don't want to say under control or in line. You didn't have Duke Williams buy-in more this year. And I don't know how much they tried in all these aspects, but you had some injury problems. I get it. They all have those, but you put up Natai Rogers for 9 games in a year in which you're trying to make the Grey Cup. And I don't understand. You didn't go American on the interior offensive line at some point to tighten that up. You didn't do this and this and this. Yeah, it's rough because the stars of 2019, the guys who were the stars of 2019, is Kyron Moore the only one back next year? Because Fajardo and Shaq Evans and guys like that are there. Remember Shaq Evans in 2019?
Yeah, I do.
Shaq Evans in 2022, for whatever reason, is not the same player. And I thought that guy was on a rocket ride to the moon after that year.
It's a great place for us to wrap up the Riders discussion right there, is just like not making the playoffs in a Grey Cup year in which you're hosting, with the runway being there and some of the moves that were made that were wrong and the coaching decisions and lack of control of the room. It's like there's a lot to work on there, which I think is the over-encompassing conversation here, that Fajardo is the guy who's going to get sat down and everybody's going to be talking about it like we just did, but there's bigger issues at hand for that franchise right now moving forward. So we only have about 90 seconds here to be able to wrap up, DT, but I want to ask you about the biggest news of the week, which is Jesse Gibbon getting his first start for the Edmonton Elks.
Chris Jones, GM of the year.
When I saw that come out, I thought of you because I was like, wait a minute, they traded what they did to Hamilton and he's just getting his first start now and they've already re-signed him and he hasn't played for them. I was like, okay, interesting. But the actual thing I wanted to get just your quick 30-second thought on is Collaros, the extension, the re-signing. I wrote an article on it at the start of the week, and before the Fajardo news, I was going to do the podcast with you this week on all things Collaros, but what does that mean to that franchise moving forward?
I think it's great. They're giving Zach to be the chance to be the first quarterback to win 6 straight Grey Cups. Perfect. Take that, Edmonton Elks of the 70s and 80s. 100% deserves a raise. He is everything to that team. I can point out to all the stuff he does on the field. Mike O'Shea will say he's an incredible leader off the field. Right. And I feel like he loves Zach Collaros for his incredible leadership and the way guys respond. So perfect deal, had to be done from the Bombers' perspective. And for Zach, he gets to stay where he's comfortable and win more Grey Cups. Boom, done.
Wade Miller, Kyle Walters, Mike O'Shea, Buck Pierce, Zach Collaros, like that group of 5 men, it's like, whoa, the synergy that is created by that 5 is the reason why a lot of good things have happened. So he is Derek Taylor at DT on OB is where you can find him on social media. I am at TSN_Marsh. Thank you so much for following along. It's time for DT to go get into some Vegas shenanigans. It looks friggin' beautiful there. How warm is it out there?
29 Celsius?
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It was pretty nice at Topgolf yesterday. Yep.